Well, hi and welcome to this week's vlog. As promised, it's the Q&A. I'm going to actually split this Q&A into two vlogs because I got asked quite a lot of questions. So thank you very much for everyone who asked those questions. And what we'll do is if you comment on either this week or next week, or in fact if you commented on last week's vlog, you'll be entered into the draw to win this vlog pocket here. So get your comments in if you want to have a chance of winning that. Or just get your comments in anyway, even if you don't want to. Before we get started, I just want to say a couple of things. Firstly, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're well. I hope you're staying in. I hope you're looking after each other. Secondly, the podcast this week is going out on James Byrne's channel, so I'll stick a link up to that for you. And you can check the podcast out on there, and of course then all of James's other excellent content. And then from that week onwards, subsequently we've set up a new channel for the podcast, and I'll put a link up to that to you now so you can have a bit of forewarning, but don't get too excited because there's absolutely nothing on it at the moment. But once this week's has gone out on James's channel and people have had enough time to digest that, then I'll start uploading all of the previous ones onto this new channel, and from then on any new podcasts will be going out on that channel. So yeah, get subscribed to that. Also, if you didn't know, the podcast is now a podcast. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, probably others, Podbean, I think. So yeah, if you just search the photography podcast, if you want to listen and not watch, then give that a go. This week's actually has just gone by, has an extra half an hour's worth of chat on it, so which wasn't on the original YouTube release. And finally, before we get started, I just want to say I'm really sorry for the beard that you're going to see in the following footage. So the first question is from Lee Pelling, and he asks, do you keep all of your video clips you record, and if so, how do you store them all? Well, yes, I do. I do keep every single one of my video clips because, well, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I'm a digital hoarder. I keep lots and lots of data. I think I've got hard drives that I've taken out of old computers going back about 10 or 15 years. But yeah, I do keep them all, and I store them all on an 8 terabyte hard drive, which just sits and basically is used for the storage of all of my data. I should really back it up. I know Mally Davis had a major issue where he's lost quite a lot of data because one of his hard drives failed. I think actually 2 of them failed. But yeah, I keep it all on a hard drive, and I don't delete anything. So I've got all of my vlogs on there, that even though they're uploaded to YouTube, I've got every single bit of my data, my videos, B-roll, A-roll recorded on there. And I've also got all of my images. I think I've got all the raw files from every trip that I've vlogged still stored. So I probably should have a bit of a clear out, but yeah, I'm a bit of a hoarder. So Brian Egerton, I think he's Egerton, could be Egerton. I said this last time, but anyway, either way, hello Brian, hope you're well. I know you're, I'm pretty sure you're shielding as well, so I hope things are going okay for you, and I hope you're not struggling too much. We'll get through it. He asked, I'm looking at upgrading my camera, and I've looked at the 5D Mark III, but nearly all of my lenses are EFS, which means they're made for crop sensors and not for the full frame of a 5D Mark III. He says, besides my 50mm f1.8 and my Sigma 70-300, would you recommend the 5D for street photography? So I used the 5D on my very first. In fact, I've used the 5D 2 or 3 times for street photography, and it's a perfectly fine camera for it. It's excellently purposed for all sorts of photography, really. And your 50mm f1.8 for me would be a perfect street lens. I use the Sony a6000 personally. I've got a 50mm 1.8 on that. But it's actually, when you multiply it up by the crop factor, it's actually the equivalent of a 75mm f1.8. And I find I did struggle at first with the prime lens and the fixed focal length, but I found that you get more of a style, I think, and you get far more used to the the style of shot you're going to take if you are restricted to one specific focal length. So now when I go out, I know the type of shots I'm looking for, and I can tell if it's going to work or not simply because I know the focal length I'm going to be shooting at. Whereas I think if I had a zoom lens, I'd probably be a bit more haphazard and a bit more all over the place. And the focal length of 75mm, the equivalent of 75mm, works brilliantly for me. I think it's perfect for street photography for me, except for one caveat on that, and that's if you're indoors or in a tight space. It then becomes a bit difficult. So for instance, when I went to Tate, the large areas of the Tate, the galleries, etc., were absolutely fine, but when I found I was down a corridor, or for instance there was a bit where I was stood directly opposite the wall where the escalator comes up, and I was really tight for room there, and I was really struggling with that focal length. I could have done with it actually being a true 50mm. In terms of whether the 5D works for street photography, it does, but it is quite conspicuous. So if you're happy to wander around with a big old chunky bit of kit, taking shots, then that's fine. And when I went to London, no one really cares. I don't think you can walk around. You could probably walk around with a camera this big and no one would pay any attention. But whether if you go to some of the smaller provincial towns, whether people would be so keen if they saw you with a whacking great camera pointing in their face, especially if you're going to put the 70-300 on it, is another matter. So I don't know how much second-hand 5Ds are going for. I don't know if you're even looking at buying it second-hand or new, but if you're looking at buying it new, I'd certainly think about maybe looking at getting a smaller mirrorless camera. So something like the A6000, which is a fantastic camera, even though it's, 8 years old now. It's a brilliant camera for street photography. The focusing's lightning quick on it, and it's or one of their variants, so the A6300 or the A64, 65, whatever they go up to now, and pair that up with an f1.8 lens. I think I got the IS version, which is just a cut of about 250 quid, but brilliant lens. So, or a Fuji, maybe a Fuji, what are they, XT10s, I think XT20 and XT20, I think it might be, or one of the Fuji rangefinder type cameras. I know they're a bit more expensive, but yeah, look into that, I would say. But then if you are thinking about having a multi-purpose camera, so you're looking at landscape as well, and you're thinking you just want to upgrade in general, then I would probably go for the Canon, pair it up with your 50mm 1.8 for street. And if you want to maybe look at upgrading it, or not upgrading it, but you want to look at having a different option, then maybe get I think there's a 85mm f2, possibly something like that. So, or there might be an 85mm f1.8. Have a look at that and see if you fancy doing that. I hope that answers your question in a very long way. So Paul D. Lewis asks, do or would you alter a scene at the time to make a better composition, e.g. move branches or insert leaves? Short answer to that, Paul, is yes. The long answer is yes, but with some caveats. So for instance, I went to Scalaba Force a couple of years back and took a shot, and there might have been a strategically placed leaf on one of the rocks. And there may be an instance where I'll maybe just move a couple of things out the way. If I'm on the beach, for instance, and there's a piece of driftwood, I might maybe just put that into a slightly more advantageous position. But I certainly wouldn't go snapping, huge amounts of branches or pulling up flowers or moving stuff around in, on a mass scale just to change the picture. Equally, I wouldn't do anything that's detrimental to the environment just for the sake of a photo. So yeah, small things, yes. Large things, damaging things, definitely not. Oh, this is a good one. This is from Jim Bob. Hello, mate. He says, congrats on getting up to 2,000 subs. He says, my question is, what are the best tips for the steady growth of subscribers? Do you find this has happened from uploading more regularly or from networking with other YouTube content creators? My advice for the steady increase in subs is just to keep going and not worry about it. And I know that's really easy to say when you sat on, a couple of thousand subs, but for someone starting out, I'd say just upload regularly. Definitely upload regularly. Make sure that you're putting out something that adds value, and make sure that you're doing something that you love, and the subscribers will come or they won't. And it's just as simple as that. There are ways that you could gain subscribers. There are loads of ways that you could gain subscribers. So you could advertise your vlogs far and wide. You could spam every group. You could pay hundreds of pounds to Google Ads and to Facebook and to whatever to promote your vlogs. You could buddy up with other collaborators, other vloggers. You could pay someone, famous to go on a workshop and, maybe get some traction that way. There are lots of ways you can do it, but in my opinion, the best way to do it is to let yourself grow organically, because that way you'll get the subscribers who are right for you. So you'll get the right people rather than large numbers of people. So it's much better to have a viewing base who want to watch you and understand you and have grown with you, rather than having a viewing base that you've just bought. Because, and I'm not saying that, in any kind of negative fashion. I'm trying to actually be quite positive about it, because I think that you will feel as a person and as a creator much happier if you're creating content for people who actually want to watch it, rather than people who've kind of come over to you as a recommendation from someone else, or come over to you because you've bought the subscribers or paid for a lot of advertising. People find their level in YouTube, I think, and although there are some people who probably deserve more subscribers, and there are some people who probably don't deserve as many as they've got, you find that the real joy of YouTube and creating is the interaction with the people who want to watch you. So it doesn't matter if you've got 20,000 or 100,000 or 20 subscribers. If those 20 you've got all really want to watch you, and you have a great interaction with them on your channel, then that's what really matters. So, well, in my opinion, it does, and that's what will keep you happy. So, regular vlogs, of course, are good. Producing good content and striving to produce good, interesting, entertaining content is important. Most definitely doing something you love is very important. But what's more important than the number of subscribers you have and the number of views that you get is the amount of views that you get from people who get you and the interaction you have with them. So I hope that answers your question. It's really difficult. I know it's really difficult to look at it as anything other than a numbers game. And there was a point when I think probably between about 600 and 1200 subscribers, where I used to literally sit every day and go on my app and look and see if I've gained any new subscribers. And I still do a little bit now, but what I've learned over time, like I said, to gauge my success on is the interactions I have with the people who watch, rather than the number of people who watch. So that would be my advice to you. Yes, there are ways of doing it. Just put out content, let it grow organically, and just enjoy the experience and the interaction you have with the people who watch you because they want to watch you. Josh Carrick, hi Josh, hope you're well. Hope you're enjoying that print. Josh won one of my previous competitions and has got an A2 print on his wall, which I'm so chuffed that someone even wanted a print on their wall. But yeah, that's really cool. He says, I think he's talking about the pubcasts, which, can I just say, I absolutely love doing. They've just I love them so much actually that I sometimes think maybe I should just do those and not even worry about vlogging. I really enjoy it. But he's talking about the podcast here, and he says, obviously you're the brains of the outfit, which is, if I'm the brains of the outfit, I'm not sure what that's saying for the other 5. He says, but when is the F5.6 gang going to do a meetup in the Vegas of the North, Blackpool? And who is the 0.6 of the group? So better explain that if you don't get it. So I think it's Thomas Heaton, Gavin Hardcastle, Adam Gibbs and Nick Page have called themselves F4, obviously relating to Aperture, you know. And because there's 6 of us, because there's myself and Darren, Jamie, Mally, Dave, Griff and James, we can't be F6, can we? Because there isn't an F6. So Josh has suggested that we become the F5.6 group. Who's the 0.6 though? I'm probably the 0.6, I think. The other guys, they're all brilliant, really knowledgeable, excellent photographers, really quick-witted and interesting, and you know, people I'm really, you know, proud to call my friends, and just I love podcasting with them. I think it's just brilliant, such good fun, and I can't wait actually once this lockdown's over to do it in person. Whether we'll make it to the Vegas of the North, and that's relating obviously to the fact that the F4 group went on a road trip around America and ended up doing a meet and greet in Vegas. I'm not sure that if we did a meetup in Blackpool, many people would turn up. Maybe a few to hurl abuse, but yeah, I'm not sure. But I'll mention it to them and see what they say. But thanks for the question, Josh. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here's a question now from John Chalice. And he says, we all know you vloggers are very good at what you do and take a lot of time with landscape pictures taken on a tripod. But if you were short of time and could only take a few handheld shots, are there a set of Gary's rules that you would stick to guarantee good results, or would you just sort of ad lib it on the day? Well, the most important thing, I think, is to make sure that if you are hand holding, that your shutter speed's fast enough that you don't introduce any camera shake or motion blur or any blur into the image. It needs to be sharp. So the first thing I would do is I would probably knock the ISO up a little bit if I needed to make sure that I got a faster shutter speed. And I think the rule on the shutter speed is that you shoot the same as the focal length, the same or faster as the focal length of the lens. So if you're shooting at 50 millimeters, for instance, then you need to be shooting at 1/50th of a second or faster. If you're shooting with a 200 millimeters, then it needs to be 1/200th of a second or faster. Obviously, if you've got image stabilization, you might be able to get away with a bit slower. But yeah, just get it. Crank that shutter speed up as fast as you can get it. Still take your time, you know, make sure that you've got the picture composed how you want it to be, and make sure you're happy with everything. But yeah, get it all set up. And I mean, I've done handheld panoramics before, which aren't too difficult to do. And a little tip on that is, so normally what I do is I'll set the camera in, say, f11. Again, you know, set the camera in f11, set the camera to aperture priority mode, and then, you know, set the aperture to f11, have a little look at the settings, so focus it up, get the exposure correct, have a look at what settings you've got. So for instance, f11, and then you might be shooting at, you know, 1/200th of a second with ISO 400, and then move over to manual mode and put those settings in, dial those settings in, and then just click, make sure you stay straight, and you can get away with shooting quite nice panos like that. And I've done that several times in the past. I mean, I haven't done it for a long time because I've always taken a tripod with me, but it's certainly possible. And yeah, just make sure that you know, you're not blowing your highlights, and make sure that you've got a shutter speed that's fast enough that you're not introducing any motion blur. and you don't really need a tripod. I mean, James Popsis doesn't use a tripod at all, does he? I don't think so. You don't need a tripod. I think it just helps. It's kind of just slows everything down a bit for a photographer, and it just helps you. But you don't need it. Just make sure that you. Biggest thing for me, don't introduce any motion blur, and don't be scared of a little bit of ISO if you need to introduce it. So I've got a question now from Martin Amory. Hello Martin, hope you're well. He says, with your background in landscape photography techniques and photo style, has this been a transferable skill set for your street photography, and has it had an influence on your street photography? Definitely, 100% it has. I think if you look at most of my street shots, I mean, the genre of street photography is so wide and vast. There are so many different styles you could take. You could do street portraits, you could do candid shots, you could do, well, you know, it's a hugely vast genre. There's so many different options of street photography, and I think my style is very much that I will take shots of the urban landscape, if you like, with the human interest in it. So there are occasions where there are many occasions where the person is the main focus of the shot, so the surroundings aren't really that important, or well, they're still important, but they play a supporting role, if you like. But a lot of my images, especially there's a set from Manchester that I did, some from around London as well, they're all about the architecture and the buildings and the landscape, the urban landscape, and the way that knits together with a bit of human interest in it as sort of like a, you know, just not necessarily a focal point of the shot, but just something that just holds the shot together. So definitely. And in terms of landscape as well, the most important thing with landscape, you know, is light, for me. And that's the same with street. It doesn't matter really what you're taking. Light is really key. So I've certainly pulled that over from landscape photography. So even if I'm not looking at the street scene as an urban landscape composition, so if I'm focusing way more on the person in the image or the human interest, it's the light falling on them that is the key, rather than the composition of or the posing of that individual. I'm not bothered about, it seems that in my street photography I'm not bothered about posing or necessarily even the interaction between, say, two people. It's much more about the light falling on them and the landscape composition in the urban setting, if that makes sense. But thank you for the question, I really appreciate that. I hope that made sense. Scott Tilley now Scott is not feeling well. I know this was 5 days ago, Scott, and I know your wife's a nurse, so I want to say thank you very much to her for everything that she does, and I do hope that you haven't had the nasty COVID, but you say you've got the worst flu symptoms you've ever had, so I very, very much hope that you're safe and well. Anyway, your question was, which UK city would you like to do some street photography in, and if you could only take one lens, what would that be? So I think covered lenses before, but I'll talk about the lens very quickly. I really, really like my 50mm 1.8, which is a 75mm equivalent on my Sony a6000. So that's definitely, without a doubt, the lens that I would take to do any street photography anywhere, really. And in terms of which UK city, I think I'd really like to go to Edinburgh. I've been thinking about this. I mean, I've done Manchester, I've done London, I've done Peterborough, I've done Liverpool unsuccessfully. Edinburgh, I think, or maybe York. Yeah, maybe York. Edinburgh or York. Basically, a city that's got a lot of very historic buildings and a very sort of a bit of an oldie worldy feel to it. Not necessarily oldie worldy. Well, let me try and explain. So, for instance, I wouldn't want to go taking like street photography in Milton Keynes, if that makes sense, or Stevenage, which was like, you know, some out of the 70s when I actually did go there and do some. I'd rather go to somewhere that's a little bit more got a bit more history about it, you know, cobbled streets and old buildings and, you know, tight alleyways and things like that. So yeah, Edinburgh or York, I think. If I had to push, probably Edinburgh. Okay, so another one here from Bert Jake. Hi Bert, hope you're well. You ask, if you could only take one bit of equipment other than the camera and lens, what would it be? Oh, well, I think it'd have to be a tripod. Providing with a little cheat that I could screw a polarizer onto my lens. Yeah, I think it'd have to be, yeah, a polarizer I would really like to take, but also a tripod. So if I could get away with maybe calling the polarizing filter a part of my lens, then a tripod. Yeah. Like I said, you don't need a tripod, but then the problem is if I took the polarizer and didn't take a tripod, and you know, lost too much light, I might start struggling a little bit. So even though I could bump the ISO up, yeah, tripod. That was a long-winded answer to a very short and easy question, wasn't it? Rob Alton is next. Hello Rob, hope you're well, mate. We must get out once this whole thing's cleared up. He says, if you could visit anywhere in the world to photograph, where would it be? I think I said this, I think on the last Q&A that I did, I said I'd like to go to Thailand and photograph those sort of stacks, you know, those sea stacks. But the more that I've watched bits and pieces, like I watched something from Greg Whitten, and I also watched something from Darren Spoonley when they filmed their trips to the Dolomites in Italy. I really was impressed with that landscape. So I'd really like to maybe go to the Dolomites or New Zealand or Lofoten or Iceland. But other than those, no. I think the Dolomites. Yeah, if I could go somewhere. I mean, God, if I could go anywhere right now, I'd really flipping want to go to Scotland, which is not that far away, is it really? And I still haven't been there. I bang on about this every year. Oh, I must go to Scotland, and still haven't been. So maybe once lockdown's over, that's where I'll head. But yeah, dream destination. I'll probably the Dolomites. I think all the other ones I mentioned, all Scotland, or maybe Canada, or the Alps. Dolomites. So I've got a question now from Chris Hobbs. Hi Chris, hope you well. No, Chris, he's a really nice guy, by the way, and a good photographer, and he lives locally, and I've met him several times. He also comes and fits my blinds. So yes, hello Chris, hope you're well, mate. His question is, if you could travel anywhere to the world, where would it be? Well, I just answered that in terms of pretty much everywhere. And if you could only take one lens, one camera and two filters plus your tripod, what ones would you choose? Well, in terms of what I've got, it would be my Canon 5D, which is playing up at the moment. I'm actually having a few issues with it for some reason. It's overexposing areas of shots, so I've got a horrible feeling it's to do with when it got wet. But you know, we'll sort that out when we get a chance. I would take my Canon. One lens would be my 24-70 f2.8 because it's just a fantastic lens. Two filters I would take. If I could only take two filters, it would be a polarizing filter and a 10-stop neutral density filter, because you don't really need grad filters these days. You can bracket shots and exposure blend. So I'd take my full frame camera. I'd take a 24-70mm lens. I would take a polarizing filter, and I would take a 10-stop ND filter. So I hope you enjoyed that first part of the vlog. Like I say, remember, if you comment on anything, you'll be entered into a draw to win the gimbal thanks for everyone who asked questions. I really appreciate it. And yeah, look out for part 2 of that coming soon. And in the meantime, I just want to say, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to watch the podcast. And yeah, stay safe. And that's it.